Is emotional intelligence the secret weapon to successful leaders? Let's find out in this video. Now, today I'm going to be talking about some of the secrets that you can utilize in order for you to be effective as a leader using emotional intelligence. And if you stay tuned, I can talk about how you can use EI or EQ to your advantage. Hey everyone, if you don't know who I am already, my name is Michael Tabirade, leadership and performance coach. Whether you're listening to this via podcast or watching this on YouTube, this is an opportunity to learn about how you can use emotional intelligence as a leader, whether you're a seasoned leader or new in a role. So let's get into it. Now, loads of people have been talking about emotional intelligence, and of course it was popularized by Daniel Goleman, I believe back in 1995. And it's really been a great way to understand how we can better regulate and manage our emotions. Our emotions being the things that we experience and feel when certain things are triggered in different situations. And so people have realized that actually emotions play a big part when it comes to any form of performance. So emotional intelligence has been a big thing. Now, Daniel Goleman wasn't the actual person who came up with emotional intelligence. There was a few people before then who came up with this model. But essentially, emotional intelligence as a framework, as a diagram, is broken into 5 main bits. So the core components are self-awareness, self-management, motivation, social awareness, and social management, or relationship management, as some people would like to call it. And so when we're thinking about emotional intelligence in terms of the benefits that it can provide for you, this is centered around, again, increased performance, because you have the ability to understand what's happening with yourself and in your environment and know how to respond to those different things. It helps enhance better decision making, and it gives you the ability to manage different things like conflict resolution, so to speak. And so when thinking about EQ, it is a fantastic way to position you as somebody who knows how to deal with different situations. And this is why EQ has been badged as something that may be more important than IQ. Okay, I haven't looked at the studies too deeply, but yes, this is something that people are saying more and more and more. So let's get more into some of the content. So the first part I want to talk about in terms of these components is self-awareness and self-management. Now, essentially, when thinking about self-awareness, this is the ability to understand what's happening with you. Okay, so let's say, for example, something happens. Your ability to break down and understand how you respond to those different things is what is defined as self-awareness. You become opened or illuminated to the very thing that you do when something happens. If someone says something a certain way and then you kind of do this, it's random. You're aware that you do that based on observation and feedback that is either given to you based from someone else, or you do some sort of journaling or observations that allows you to understand yourself better. And so self-awareness allows you to understand yourself better, because with any form of development, it starts with self-awareness. You have to have some level of feedback. Like I said in my previous video, there's going to be input, process, output, and then the feedback that you develop. The feedback that you develop is what enables you to raise your self-awareness so that your inputs are improved. And these inputs will be behaviors aligned to you achieving a specific thing. And so with that in mind, we have to be in a position where we can broaden our self-awareness. Now, of course, what comes with that, when you get information and data based on how you're doing things or how you respond to different situations, you start to develop self-management, or what's known as self-regulations. You regulate yourself a certain way. So this is where you monitor your activity and how you respond to different situations so that you can change your behavior. And so as leaders within business or within an organization or whatever it may be, it's important for you to have an opportunity to create that space that enables you to develop your self-awareness and make changes to your behavior so you can endorse self-regulation and self-management. Now, there is this whole thing that is set up when it comes to this stuff, and really it is centered around this idea of, if you experience something, okay, and let's say, for example, you think you're angry, okay, when you really dissect that emotion, so to speak, Are you really feeling angry, or is it frustration or something else? Maybe you label it as annoyance, okay? And so annoyance is the thing you've labeled it as. But the question then becomes, now that you've felt this and you've labeled it, is accepting that this is what you feel, because they say that even though we have positive emotions which make us feel good, negative emotions from an evolutionary standpoint are also important because it helps us make decisions in terms of how we want to maneuver moving forward. This may be from a survival standpoint. This may be from a development or improvement standpoint. It gives us awareness and perspective. And so negative emotions are good from that standpoint, because then you can start questioning yourself and say, how do I now want to moving forward? How do you want to do that? And so when it comes to this, you start making decisions based on your values or your highest version of yourself. You make decisions based on who you tell yourself that you are in the highest, goodest version of yourself. And so this is what it comes down to when thinking about self-regulation and also self-awareness. This whole process that I described is known as emotional regulation. It is the ability to understand and really delve into what you're feeling so that you can, again, change your behavior moving forward. The next thing to think about is empathy. And it's understanding that empathy is the glue that allows you to lead effectively. Why? Because it enables you to understand your team really well. It's this interconnectedness. It's this ability to, again, feel like the person feels like you know them and they know you. Like it's deeper than just this surface level nonsense. And so with that in mind, you need to be able to employ empathy, where you're giving people the space to say what they need to say. You're asking them questions, showing inquiry and interest and concern sincerely and lovingly towards these individuals. You have the ability to empathetically listen to what people are saying. And this is shown through your body language and confirmatory sort of like gestures or prompts or noises or whatever it may be. The point being made is you're giving people the space and time to think and say what they need to say. Really, really important stuff. And so with that in mind, it's recognizing that there's a time and place for you to build this empathy. It can't be underlooked. Here's a quick question for you. How have you used emotional intelligence in your role currently? I'd love to learn more about your stories and everything else, so leave your comments below. It's something that should definitely not be underutilized or underrepresented because, again, emotional intelligence, which is really employing empathy and using self-awareness to change behavior based on our emotions, it's the ability to really take things to the next level. So if you got any comments or stories centered around how you've used emotional intelligence, feel free to leave a comment below. Just one moment before you continue the video. If you're interested in gaining more information surrounding how you can develop as a leader, how you can employ good life management, more stuff centered around portfolio careers, then you may want to sign up for my newsletter, the Mastery Leadership newsletter, where I talk about some of this stuff. I'll give you tips and tricks and hints and things around all of this stuff in order for you to be an effective leader, whether this is in your business, in your workplace, or even in your family household. Look, leadership is really important. Life management is really important, and all of us are cultivating portfolio careers. I think they said by 2025, at least 50% of people, at least in the UK, are going to have some sort of portfolio career. So if these topics really interest you, especially the leadership stuff, then make sure you sign up for my newsletter where you can get weekly information on this and just feel up to date in terms of how you can be the best leader that you can be, where I define leadership as living by example. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Now, of course, in a previous video, I spoke about this whole idea of employing self-monitoring. This is the ability to maneuver and manage your emotions and how you respond in different situations. But it's not necessarily removing from this sense of authenticity. You're still authentic at the core, but sincerely you understand that there are social norms that exist. And so it's not getting trapped by this idea of introjection where it's like, oh, we're just doing things based on what people tell us to do, X, Y, and Z. But it is a little bit of conforming to fit in so that you're not treated as weird or raw, whatever it may be. Because if you have too much self-monitoring, then you're seen as fake. But if you don't have any self-monitoring at all, people are like, this person's crazy. So there has to be an element of it. Why am I saying this? It's because you can utilize this in order to develop influence and form deeper connections and relationships with different people. And so it's important for you to build real relationships. This is where you invest in asking people questions about themselves and their lives, showing an interest in what they do. Not just talking about work all the time, but seeing how their family are doing or how their friends are doing. Now, of course, there are going to be varying views around this. Some people say don't make friends at work, whatever it may be. I'm not necessarily suggesting that. I'm talking about building rapport. I'm talking about building relatability. I'm talking about building an empathy for these individuals. And because we're human beings, we connect naturally with people anyway. So it makes sense to do some of this stuff. And so with that in mind, people who are working within an emotionally intelligent environment are likely to have positive outcomes, okay? If there are more positive outcomes or a more positive environment, you're going to have people who are more willing and wanting to work. They have a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a sense of autonomy, all these different things I spoke about in the previous video, which you should definitely check out. And so for me, I believe I'm able to build good, strong relationships because I believe I'm myself in most situations. Now, of course, there's going to be caveats to this. I'm not going to remember everything that I'm saying in relation to this. But I truly do believe that's what allows me to win. I remember one time I was at university and there was somebody who was annoyed with me because they were like, I treat everybody the same. And I'm like, why shouldn't I? You know? And it's not like they're saying the same. But what I'm doing is I'm treating people with a certain candor and a certain respect and a certain integrity. But because I'm engaging with those individuals on a deep basis, it feels like I'm connecting with them only and they're the only people within the room. And I do that sincerely. This is not no fake thing or some formula that I've cracked or whatever it may be. This is exactly how I am. But when other people observe me do this to other people, they get shocked. Now, of course, you don't necessarily want backlash when it comes to this stuff. But what you do want is to allow people to feel heard. So the main point being here is form deep relationships with people, take time out to study them and understand them, and make sure that you are valuable to them by helping them out in different guises X, Y, and Z without expecting any reward. Now, of course, when speaking about emotional intelligence, we're also speaking about motivation, and this motivation comes from understanding and utilizing positive emotions. And so when we're thinking about motivation in this context, we have to find ways to, as leaders, inspire and motivate our workforce. And so this can be done in many different guises. This could be done where you set up things like action learning sets. You could have empathy circles. You could have coaching and mentoring. You could do this in your meetings. There are various different ways in which we can motivate our workforce. And so it's important to help individuals develop that self-awareness and that self-regulation, not only on an individual level, but also on a team level, where you do this together as a team. You develop your awareness through things like lessons learned and reviews and evaluations, and develop actions in order to see how those new behaviors are going to be seen based on delivery or results or whatever it may be. So these are really important things to bear in mind. Now, as promised before, I said there'd be some bonus content. And so with this in mind, this is all centered around reflective leadership. And this is just a fancy way of saying, have the ability to reflect effectively. So how do you do this? I had a coaching client today, actually, and, you know, they're looking to improve their levels of confidence and everything else. And one of the questions I asked them was, how are you going to measure this? You know, this is something that we ask at the beginning as coaches. They said they don't really know. And so I lent to them a suggestion in terms of how they could do this. And one way you could do this is through journaling. If you set up a system where you journaled on a daily basis or even on a weekly basis, okay, and rated your feelings or your mood with an emoji, a color, a number, whatever it may be, over time, when you review this on a monthly, okay, all the different weekly entries that you've done, you can understand what that month felt like in terms of your mood. And so this is a really salient and succinct way of capturing qualitative information. This is part of the way in which you raise your awareness, because on that monthly review or quarterly review or whatever it may be, You're in a position and situation where you're like, wow, this is how I was feeling, and I was feeling this way because of this. And so you're going to notice certain patterns. And so journaling is a fantastic way of doing this. Capturing reflections is a fantastic way of doing this. It's also being clear about your values. And when you're doing this journaling or just questioning to self, asking yourself, did I live in accordance to my values? Are the values the actual thing that I'm doing day to day in terms of my behaviors? That's the reality of the situation. You need to check that question. And so with all of this stuff that you build, what ends up happening is you have a cadence of reflection and journaling, actions and feedback, and you build up awareness in terms of how you should moving forward. And so this is where you develop some level of continuous improvement. So if you want to utilize something like this for yourself, I actually have something called the Life Navigation System, where you can use a Notion template to do your journal entries, and not just do that, do way more. It's a whole life management system in itself. So if this is something you're interested in, then make sure you check the links below. Now, we've spoken about a lot of stuff here, really centered around how do you cultivate good emotional intelligence as a leader to be effective. And we've spoken about the 5 main components of emotional intelligence, centered around self-awareness, self-management or self-regulation, motivation in the middle. Then you've got social awareness and social management or social regulation or relationship management, okay? And so I feel like this is a very neat way of really tracking and improving your behavior. If you think about it, it's split into 2 different main bits. You've got the awareness side and you've got the regulation side, and the other sort of bits are centered around self and centered around other people, which we're defining as social, or what is known as social intelligence. So if you like this video and want to see more videos centered around leadership, life management, and portfolio careers, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.